Chapter 12. Delivery. Fighting nerves, standing tall, speaking well, coping with disasters. This chapter has a few suggestions for overcoming stage fright, for moving and standing well, and for using your voice well. Each of these issues is a special subject in its own right. People write books about them and give expert advice, tuition, and treatment. I am an amateur in all of them. I can only claim that these suggestions have worked for me and for people I know. I hope they work for you, so that you can do justice to the brilliant words which you can now create. The Man with Egg on His Shirt. Through your superb writing and your meticulous and honest rehearsals, you have given yourself the best possible inoculation against stage fright. But even so, you may still be overcome and need some kind of remedy before you begin to speak. If you do get stage fright, remember first that you are in good company. According to a recent poll, Americans are more frightened of public speaking than anything else, including death. Napoleon suffered from stage fright before speaking, so did Winston Churchill. Some years ago, I watched Michael Heseltine in action, one of the most successful orators in modern British politics. He had a friendly, even adoring audience to speak to, but his hands shook and his knuckles turned white when he gripped the lectern. There is a theory that stage fright is linked to genius, and that must be true. After all, look how badly you get it. In the whole of American history, only one president has ever claimed to enjoy public speaking. He was Warren G. Harding, 1920 to 1923, who gave it the engaging name of bloviating. Harding generally figures in the bottom 10 of American presidents. All the undisputed great presidents found public speaking an ordeal. So if you were nervous before speaking, congratulate yourself on being Lincoln, not Harding. Apart from thinking about the famous company you share, the first rule for dealing with stage fright is to recognize it. The symptoms of stage fright can be dramatic and reinforce each other. The thought of speaking to the audience makes you nervous. Your hands start shaking. You are now doubly nervous. Not only will the audience hear you make a bad speech, but they will see your hands shaking. Your throat now tightens, and your stomach starts churning. More things which the audience will notice. More things to worry about. One symptom of stage fright, incidentally, is the belief that the audience knows everything about you, including things for which there is no outward evidence, like a churning stomach. It may help you to know that all of these things are meant to happen. They are the product of natural chemical reactions, which enabled the human species to survive when threatened by mammoths or saber-toothed tigers. The mammoths and tigers never got stage fright, and look where they are. If that does not ease off the symptoms, there are a number of well-tested techniques you can try to control them. If your muscles are tensing up, try sitting in a chair and deliberately tensing each muscle in sequences from head to toe. Think of nothing but the tension in that muscle. Crank it up as high as it will go. Count slowly to 3 and let the tension go. Make the muscle floppy. If you were lucky enough to have a partner with you, get him or her to give you a massage. Relax your facial muscles by yawning and making funny faces. If your arms, knees, and legs are shaking, make them shake deliberately and then go floppy. If your hands are hot, rinse them in cold water. If they are cold, rub them together. In general terms, obey your body's instructions. If you are thirsty, have a glass of water. Nothing stronger. If you are hungry or feeling sick to your stomach, have a little chocolate or fruit. Take any opportunity to go to the lavatory. Some people like to escape from the nerve-wracking speaking environment by visualizing an ideal setting, either imaginary or one they know. Other people prefer to concentrate intensely on one tiny part of the setting, patterns in fabric, an old photograph, a name on a notice. One of the best ways of escaping your own feelings is to be interested in other people's. Start with your host. What does the event mean to him or her? What represents a success or a disaster? Talk to other people. Why are they here? Have they come before? What do they hope or fear from the event? At worst, you will be distracted. At best, you will discover that the audience are really quite nice people, and they want you to succeed. Many people overcome stage fright by listening to music, either real or in their heads, or by meditating, or if they were religious, by prayer. It is an excellent idea to read something aloud before you begin your speech, but do not use any of your own words. Take with you your favorite piece of poetry or prose, and then read it like a ham actor. Exaggerate all your mouth and facial movements. Give full value to all the vowels. Bite off every consonant. This will convince you that you have not dried up completely. It will also exercise your vocal cords and prepare you to speak expressively. If you do have stage fright, it is important to change the balance in your mind between yourself and the audience. They are not the enemy. They are not all-powerful and all-knowing, and they have no dominion over you. Remind yourself constantly what a great person you are, how lucky they are to have you, what a superb speech you are about to give them. Begin this mental preparation early by dressing and grooming yourself faultlessly. In the light of the conventions of your audience, dress in a way that conveys respect, but do so at your highest range of affordable elegance. Take special care with personal hygiene and grooming, and all your accessories. Check your appearance minutely at the last possible moment before speaking. Apart from making you feel better, dressing carefully is an excellent distraction. My old university, Oxford, is aware of this. For examinations, it makes its undergraduates wear an absurd costume called subfusc, which they will never have to wear again in their entire lives. Assembling subfusc is a bore and an anxiety on examination day, but it takes one's mind off the exams. Trick yourself in the same way by picking over your clothes. If you can, give yourself a last-minute choice to make by packing alternative ties, scarves, accessories, or jewelry. Even if you are not planning to use it to deliver your speech, take a full text with you and look at it. You have had it faultlessly printed and bound, so admire it as a precious artifact. Is it not marvelous of you to share it with them? You might also enjoy composing a press release for yourself. Go back to Chapter 8, reread the definition of hyperbole, and create the most hysterically flattering account of your speech. If you need a model, read an official account of the receptions given to speeches by the late North Korean leader Kim Il-sung. A packed audience at the Sylvain Legwinski Auditorium sat spellbound, /cheered unceasingly, choked with laughter, /wept tears of joy when you spoke on blank. However, if you actually write out this press release, do not make the mistake of releasing it to the press. Finally, if the audience is still getting on top of you, try a technique which never fails. Look for the man with egg on his suit, and or the woman with the impossible makeup. There is always at least one in every crowd. You cannot feel frightened by a man with egg on his suit. That is why, subliminally, people throw eggs at politicians, or overawed by a woman with impossible makeup. Somewhere in there, you should find a remedy for stage fright which works for you. But remember also, some things never work for anybody. The first is alcohol. You may imagine you speak better after a few drinks, but you do not. At best, alcohol slows you down. At worst, it makes you lose the plot. In fact, no drug at all, lawful or unlawful, makes you speak better, including caffeine and so-called energy drinks. Apart from its terrible effect on your voice and breathing, nicotine will also throw you into conflict with the anti-smokers in the host organization or your audience. A heavy meal is bad for speaking, and cheese is especially bad for the vocal cords. So are very cold drinks. Voice. One of the components of stage fright is a terror that one's voice is inadequate. Of course it is not. Your voice has carried you through millions of successful conversations, and it will carry you through your speeches in the same way. If you have written well and talked out your speech as you wrote it, you should have gone a long way to using the strengths of your voice. If your speech has any rhythm and pace and color, it will virtually force your audience to respond. You should also have edited out, with the help of rehearsal, any words which you persistently mispronounce, and any dead fillers and irritating vocal mannerisms. Rehearsals should also have corrected any tendency to gabble or to drag. Even after rehearsals, you may still want to work on the pitch, pace, and variety of your voice. Begin by learning to control your breathing. and begin that by having somebody check your posture, both sitting and standing. He or she should be looking for tension and unnatural twists in any part of your body. Your head should be still and look comfortable, and maintaining eye contact with the audience without twisting your neck. When you are holding a comfortable, balanced posture, either standing or sitting, practice breathing in different rhythms, using different intervals to breathe in and out. Give yourself the power to breathe slowly. Feel your diaphragm just below your ribs, and make sure that you are breathing from deep down in your abdomen, not short, sharp breaths in your chest. Take the previous page of this book and read it out loud. When you come to take a breath, say out loud, breathe. Control the intervals so that this coincides with natural breaks on the page. An exercise which combines breathing and pitch is to sing parts of your speech like a psalm. Go to the piano and start off singing sentences to different notes. You have arrived at a starting note which lets you sing comfortably. That is a good natural pitch for your voice. If you think your voice lacks expression, do repeat the exercise we looked at a moment ago. Be a ham actor. Exaggerate everything you can, in both sounds and sense. Do this first with your favorite piece of poetry or prose, then work down to more ordinary writing, perhaps a page from this book. Make it sound like Victorian melodrama. Pretend that it is tragic, or funny, or inspiring. Now do the traditional trick of declaiming the telephone directory. Tape the results. They will be hilarious, but amazing. You will discover powers of articulation and expression you had never believed. You can and should transfer those powers to your speech making. For although we discussed earlier how a speech is conversation, speaking in public demands a little more effort than an intimate conversation. You have a larger space to fill, and human beings deaden your sound and compete with sounds of their own. You hope no more than coughs or shuffling feet. You will therefore have to do everything a little better than you do in ordinary speech. Better diction, better penetration, better expression. So give a ham actor's version of yourself. For a simple experiment in pacing, read the following passage out loud at different speeds. George Orwell would be despondent, but not surprised, by the state of the English language today. In 1984, he predicted the phenomenon of duck speak, words intended to mean nothing, and designed to show mindless acceptance of the values and mentality of its originators. Orwell's duck speak was originated by the ruling party in a totalitarian dictatorship. It was part of the general phenomenon of newspeak, language so shriveled in meaning that it would not allow people to think differently from the ruling party. Although we do not have a one-party state, we hear even more duck speak than Orwell predicted. It is created not only by governments, but by various professions and special interest groups, and for the same reason as Orwell's in 1984. Duck speak serves to identify people who are totally loyal to the values of the originating group, and it deprives them of the chance to think any other way. This passage is exactly 150 words long. At a normal rate of speech, and without mistakes, you should get through it in exactly 1 minute. Measure the times at different speeds, and note when the passage became ponderous and boring, too slow, or unintelligible, too fast. Make a note of when the passage sounded just right, probably a little over a minute, because it is quite complex, and to deliver it clearly, you would normally slow your delivery. Finally, remember that the most powerful thing you can do with your voice is not use it at all. Judicious silence has a mesmeric effect on an audience. Build pauses into your speech. Always have them before you begin, and then have some more at moments when you want an idea to sink in. Experiment in company with different lengths of pause. When does your audience start to feel uncomfortable? Damn microphones. All microphones without exception are irritating. Avoid them if you possibly can, and refuse point blank to use a handheld microphone. You need your hands for better things. If your audience is 40 or less, you should be able to manage without a microphone. Clip-on microphone is less obtrusive and allows you to move, but it is still something of a tether. You have to remember where the cord is and to avoid disconnecting it. If you are stuck with a fixed microphone, you simply have to stay at the right distance from it and keep your head turned to it. Insist on testing any microphone before you speak. Read long passages into it at different volumes and speeds. Have an accomplice at the back of the hall and make certain he or she can hear you well. Get the microphone exactly right for you. If it is a fixed one, put it at the height which allows your best standing position and lets you adjust your gaze freely between your text or notes and the audience. With any microphone, your voice will lose some clarity. You will have to speak more slowly and with exaggerated diction. You also will have to control your volume. Too loud and you will treat your audience to a feedback screech. If you are asked a question, always repeat it into the microphone. It is always a good idea to repeat the question. It is good manners to the questioner, and it gives you time to think. Microphones are treacherous. They amplify not only your chosen words, but your unchosen ones, muttered asides, curses, private jokes, including cynical cutting comments on your host and audience. If you have not learnt to cut these out, you deserve to have them amplified over the microphone. For the same reason, you should also eliminate paper shuffling, finger drumming, sniffs, coughs, and belches. Every little movement tells a story of its own. This was the chorus of an old-time variety song, and it is true. What your audience sees is at least as important to them as what they hear. If a speaker delivers a fine sermon about trust and integrity, but twists constantly and cannot maintain eye contact with the audience, what message will be believed? My former employer, Dennis Healy, has never cured himself of one annoying mannerism. Whenever he feels he has delivered a particularly brilliant line, he turns aside and smirks horribly at an imaginary enraptured listener off stage. If you must have such an imaginary friend, please seat him or her in the audience. At rehearsals, you should have discovered what kind of movements and gestures work for you, but the following principles may also give you some help. First, learn to make a good opening impression. Rehearse walking onto the platform. If you are already on the platform, rehearse standing up at the right moment and walking to the podium. All of these movements should be measured and calm, and you should maintain eye contact with the audience as you make them. Enjoy the hysterical applause, but do not milk it or choke it off. Get yourself completely ready to speak in your own time, arranging your text or notes and standing in a comfortable position with your head held high but not craning upwards. Gaze over your audience without speaking, focusing at the back of the room. In the silence between the end of the hysterical applause and the awkward shuffling of feet, begin your speech. In the body of your speech, there is no need for gestures. If you stand still and keep regular eye contact with the audience, you will communicate far better than twisting and waving your hands. Stillness conveys authority. The most powerful gesture of all is pausing and standing still. Make and hold eye contact in every pause with a different member of the audience. If you must make gestures, the golden rule is to make them big and decisive, and long enough for people to see them and take them in. Yet again, be a ham actor. Make your body express attitudes with a capital letter. Anger, incredulity, playfulness. If you make a hand gesture, start it from the shoulder, not the elbow, and never point across your body or your face. Certain gestures are cliches, which is their great strength. People know exactly what they mean. Pointing finger, look over there. Sustained pointing finger, accusation. Hand out, palm up. New idea coming, worth listening to. Hand out, palm down, contemptuous sweep. Idea was rubbish, forget it. Counting on fingers, list of points. Another reason why 3 is such a good number for lists. You can use your 3 biggest fingers. Hand out and stop sign, stop or calm down. Gestures are dangerous with a multinational audience because they mean different things to different cultures. A perfect excuse for standing still. Coping with emergencies. All kinds of things can go wrong with your speech. Some will be obvious to your audience. Power failure, noise, audience member taken ill, child or animal on the loose. Others will not. Previous speaker overruns/uses all your material. Major event makes your speech obsolete, or you make a mistake. Do not panic. These things happen. You cannot call yourself a public speaker until you have had to compete with a runaway mouse. If the audience is sharing the emergency, wait for it to be dealt with. If there are any victims, make sure that they have received care. Make a point of finding out about them afterwards. If there are no victims requiring care and the problem cannot be fixed quickly, resume your speech and fight to overcome the problem. If the sound system has gone wrong, do without it. Look towards the back of the hall and project your magnificent voice. If you cannot show the visual aids, do without them. As we shall see later on, no speech actually needs visual aids. A speaker always gets marks for determination. If only you are aware of the emergency, do not draw attention to it. Think quickly of a strategy to combat it. Previous speaker has taken your best points. Acknowledge this briefly and with a compliment. As X has shown so clearly, blank. And then repeat the bare point or points with no supporting material. Move on to another point in your speech. If the event is overrunning, you should have time to make instant cuts in your speech. Begin with any surviving little darlings, and then start cutting from the middle. Anything in the category of supporting material, anecdotes, jokes, facts other than killer facts. If you really run out of time, cut your speech down to number 1, thank yous. Number 2, your 3, at most, important points in one sentence with no supporting material. 3, contact address for anyone in audience who wants to write to you. 4, strong finish. 5, do the job of your speech. Urge audience to vote, /present gold watch, /open new building, etc. It is rare for a speech to become totally obsolete between composition and delivery, but at times a speech may be ambushed by some unexpected event. If that happens, give yourself some thinking time. Decide whether any of the speech is salvageable. Cut out the ruined sections and deliver the rest. If the speech is totally wrecked, scrawl some notes for a new one and talk about something else. If the audience know the title of your old speech, acknowledge and explain the change briefly. If they don't. If you accidentally cut some of your speech, do not restore it later in the wrong place. It is probably a sign that it was not worth saying. If you make a mistake on a matter of fact, correct it as soon as possible without an apology. If you make any other kind of mistake, say, mangling the punchline of a joke, ignore it. The chances are that no one noticed. Heckles, interventions, questions. Some people are very accomplished public speakers when they are delivering their prepared speech, but go completely to pieces when they have to deal with someone else. There are 3 sources of outside interference for speakers: 2 permitted, interventions and questions, 1 not, heckling. The golden rule for heckling is to ignore it. Tell the host in advance that you intend to do this and that you expect him or her to deal with rude or persistent hecklers before you continue speaking. If the heckler is genuinely witty and amusing the audience, permit yourself a smile but do not respond. With any other sort of heckler, pause, make no acknowledgement or eye contact with him, it nearly always is him, and wait for the audience or the host to deal with him. At some social dinners, some bibulous members of the audience may feel that they have the right to contribute to the after-dinner speeches. Even if you have a brilliant, funny rejoinder, resist the temptation to use it. Speak to your whole audience, not just one person. In certain kinds of structured debate, including the British Parliament and the U.S. Congress, people can stand up and ask to intervene in your speech. They will make a quick point of their own, usually by convention, in the form of a question. You do not have to accept these, but it is better to take at least some of them, especially from your principal opponents. Do not fret about them. You have probably rehearsed them. It is very unlikely that an intervention will leave you dumbfounded. On the contrary, if you are speaking well and are on top of your subject, they will give you a chance to shine and win over your audience. Do not accept an intervention in the middle of your best passages, but when you have completed them, by all means pause and take an intervention then. You will be fighting your opponent on your strongest ground, when you hope you have won the audience over. If the opponent who has been dying to intervene now declines the opportunity you have given him, then you will have made an effective point to the audience. Make certain they have seen your invitation and his refusal. Do not take interventions within interventions. Finish dealing with one intervener before you take on another. If you can rebut an intervention quickly with a killer fact, do it. If it is right, accept it graciously, but cap it with a much more telling point of your own. Don't just say, "I'm coming to that point," even if you are. It always sounds weak. Try to anticipate very briefly what you are going to say about that point. In all cases, replay the intervention. Begin your preparations for questions with the host. Establish with him or her clearly in advance whether and for how long you can expect questions. If you do not want to answer questions on your whole speech, tell the host that you want questions limited to certain parts. Your plan, your actual writing, and your rehearsals should have identified most of the likely questions, and you should be able to answer them. The golden rule for dealing with questions is to repeat them. Then, deal with them honestly and at face value. Assume that even a loaded question is a genuine request for information and deal with it on that basis. However, you should not reply at all to questions which are personally insulting. If you have the facts and information to reply to a question, present them logically and accurately. If you cannot answer a factual question, say so. Promise to write to the questioner if he or she leaves a contact address with the host and move on instantly to another questioner. Do not allow the questioner to supply the answer to his or her question because it is probably a killer fact against you. Very often a questioner will not even ask a question but make an impromptu speech. Don't stop this. It is your host's job, and the impromptu speaker is making you look better to the audience and eating into time for difficult questions from someone else. If a question finally emerges, sum up the questioner's point very quickly, impressing your audience with the contrast between your well-organized mind and the questioner's rambling. Refute it with a killer fact if you have one. Otherwise, simply repeat your strongest point. If you get no questions at all, try prompting the audience by asking something you want to cover. I am often asked blank. You might even throw quick questions at them with a yes or no answer, or invite instant shows of hands. Do not plant questions. They always get spotted, and you will be discredited. Summary. Brilliant speakers throughout history have suffered from stage fright. Recognize stage fright as normal and natural. You can use many physical and mental techniques to tackle particular symptoms of stage fright. With the right preparation, you will not regard an audience as terrifying or powerful, and you will feel that they are lucky to have you. Don't rely on drugs to tackle stage fright. Good writing and thorough rehearsal will help you make the most of your voice, but you should also learn by experiment how to control and vary your breathing, pitch, pace, and expression. Beware of all microphones. Stillness, pauses, and eye contact are the most effective gestures. If you use other gestures, make them emphatic. It often helps to be a ham actor of yourself. In an emergency, adapt, cut, or rewrite your speech. Do not apologize for coping with an emergency or a mistake. Ignore hecklers. Be prepared for interventions and questions.